I first heard about Sam Bankman-Fried at the end of 2021 from a friend who wanted me to help him figure out who he was. My friend was about to close a deal with Sam that would bind their fates through an exchange of shares in each other's companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars. FTX had been around only 2.5 years. Sam was only 29 years old, a bit odd, and had spent most of the previous 3 years outside the United States. My friend asked me if I could meet with Sam and report back whatever I made of him. A few weeks later, Sam was on my front porch in Berkeley, California. He'd emerged from an Uber in cargo shorts, a t-shirt, limp white socks, and ratty New Balance sneakers. We went for a walk. The stuff he was telling me was incredible. The sums of money in his life, for a start. Not just the tens of billions of dollars he'd accumulated in the previous 2 years, but the hundreds of millions being thrown at him by leading Silicon Valley venture capitalists who thought Sam had a real shot at being the world's first trillionaire. I asked him how much it would take for him to sell FTX and go do something other than make money. He thought the question over. $150 billion, he finally said, though he added that he had use for infinity dollars. He needed infinity dollars because he planned to address the biggest existential risks to life on Earth: nuclear war, pandemics far more deadly than COVID, artificial intelligence that turned on mankind and wiped us out. To the list of problems Sam hoped to tackle, he'd recently added the assault on American democracy. Sam wasn't braggy. His ambition was grandiose, but he wasn't. By the end of this walk, I was totally sold. I called my friend and said something like, "Go for it. Swap shares with Sam Bankman-Fried. What could possibly go wrong?" It was only later that I realized I hadn't even begun to answer his original question. Who was this guy? Most of the people who went to work for Sam Bankman-Fried ended up in jobs for which they were not obviously qualified, and Natalie Chun was no exception. In 2017, the price of Bitcoin had risen from $1,000 to $19,000, and the daily trading volumes had boomed by some massive amount that was hard to quantify. Across Asia, new cryptocurrency exchanges were popping up to service the growing gambling public. Natalie read everything she could find about cryptocurrencies and blockchains. Everyone called it a scam, she said, and she worried about that. She was struck by how few of the people who worked in crypto could explain what a Bitcoin was. What kept Natalie going was the feeling that crypto might be the next big thing. "I thought of it as a gamble with nothing to lose," she said. FTX hired her after a single interview. FTX was different from the other crypto exchanges, mainly because the guy who ran it, Sam Bankman-Fried, was different. Everything here is 5 times, she thought. 5 times more work, 5 times more growth, 5 times more money, 5 times more responsibility. Within months of moving to FTX's Hong Kong offices, Natalie found herself named head of the company's public relations. On the morning of May 11th, 2021, Sam Bankman-Fried made his first television appearance. He sat at his trading desk and talked into his computer screen to 2 female reporters on Bloomberg TV. Thick black curls exploded off his head in every direction. He wore, what he always wore, a wrinkled t-shirt and cargo shorts. His bare knee jackhammered up and down. "Crypto Wunderkind," read the on-screen caption, while the numbers on the left of the screen showed that in just the past year, Bitcoin's price had risen by more than 500%. As she watched Sam's first television performance, Natalie sensed it might play well. Sam was odd on TV, but he was also odd in real life. Not long after that first Bloomberg interview, Forbes magazine showed up. When I first looked at the numbers, I was like, can this really be true? Can this guy really be worth $20 billion? Said Chase Peterson Withorn, who led the Forbes team of investigators. From that question, they soon jumped to another. Exactly how much more than $20 billion might this guy be worth? In addition to the crypto exchange FTX, Sam also owned and controlled a crypto quant trading firm called Alameda Research. In 2020, Alameda had generated $1 billion in trading profits and was accumulating stakes in other companies and crypto tokens at a bewildering rate. In November 2021, Forbes listed his net worth at $22.5 billion. He was the richest self-made newcomer to the Forbes list ever, said Peterson Withorn. And we could easily have justified a much bigger number. By the end of 2021, Natalie, and Natalie alone, knew where Sam was at any given moment and how to get him to do what he needed to do. She put nothing on Sam's schedule that he had not agreed to, and yet Sam treated everything on his schedule as optional. By early 2022, Sam's situation was totally out of hand. Every important person on the planet seemed to want to get to know him. On February 14th, yet another very important person who really wanted to meet him was waiting for him inside his laptop. "Hey, this is Sam," said Sam to his laptop as his Zoom box opened. Onto his screen popped Anna Wintour, editor-in-chief of Vogue magazine. She wore a bob cut so sharply that its fringes plunged and curved down around her face like the blades of two scythes. "I'm so happy to finally meet you," she said. Sam didn't really know who Anna Wintour was. Natalie and others had briefed him, but he hadn't paid attention. As Anna Wintour began to speak, he clicked a button, and she vanished from his screen. In her place popped his favorite video game, Storybook Brawl. He had only a few seconds to choose his character. He picked the Horde Dragon. "Yup," said Sam to whatever Anna Wintour was saying. He could still hear her through headphones. Unless she watched his eyes, she had no reason to think that he wasn't paying attention. Sam didn't want to seem rude. It was just that his new social role as the world's most interesting new child billionaire required him to do all kinds of dumb stuff. He needed something, other than what he was expected to be thinking about, to occupy his mind. And so, oddly, the more important he became in the eyes of the world, the more important those games became to him. Storybook Brawl had everything Sam loved in a game. It pitted him against live opponents. It required him to make lots of decisions quickly. The games Sam loved allowed for only partial knowledge of any situation. Trading crypto was like that. "Yep," said Sam to whatever Anna Wintour just said. She was clearly warming to him. Everyone did these days. When you had $22.5 billion, people really wanted to be your friend. Anna Wintour was arriving at the reason for the call, the Met Gala, organized by Vogue magazine. "Interesting," said Sam. Sam could sense what Anna Wintour was after. She wanted him, present, on her Met Gala red carpet, beside her, creating buzz. Anna Wintour wanted to know all about his political activities. "We're doing a decent amount to see just how hard we can make it to steal an election. It's sad that's the forum we have to fight in, but it is," Sam said, returning Anna Wintour's face to his laptop. For a surprisingly long time, Sam's spending on American elections had flown under the radar. Back in 2020, he'd sent $5.2 million to Joe Biden's presidential campaign. Since then, Sam had tossed tens of millions more dollars at 100 different candidates and political action committees, or PACs, in ways that made his identity difficult to detect. It was yet another game, how to influence American politics, that he was learning by doing, and it was pretty fun. Anna Wintour was now warmly ending the conversation. All Sam needed to do was make his usual sounds of total agreement. "Yeah, I would love to. See ya." With that, Sam hit a button, and Anna Wintour was gone, with the understandable impression that Sam Bankman-Fried, the most open-handed billionaire ever to have walked the earth, had agreed to be her special guest at the Met Gala, that Sam might even pay for the entire thing. The Met Gala would not occur until May 2nd. In Sam's mind, he had until roughly the night of May 1st before he had to tell Natalie what he planned to do. Natalie was prepared for Anna Wintour's people to be disappointed when she told them that Sam wouldn't be there. When I asked Sam for a list of people who could describe what he was like before the age of 18, he'd said, "That's slim pickings. I'm a little confused about my childhood. I just can't figure out what I did with it." He was happy to supply me with his date of birth, March 5th, 1992. His parents were well-known Stanford law professors Joe Bankman and Barbara Freed. "Childhood was a funny thing for Sam," said Joe. "There were some things I had to teach myself to do," Sam said. "Smiling was the biggest thing that I most weirdly couldn't do." It was in middle school that he became conscious of the fact that he was not a happy person. Depression took many forms, and his was the low-level, simmering kind. "My form of it was not out-of-control negative," he said. "My form of it was lack of positive." He felt nothing in the presence of art. He found religion absurd. To his unrelenting alienation, there was one exception: games. In 6th grade, Sam heard about a game called Magic. Sam was good at magic. In the fall of 2012, Sam had entered his junior year at MIT as just another physics student who had lost his interest in physics. At the job fair, he found all these booths run by Wall Street firms. He dropped his resume with the firms looking for traders. It still felt like a lark. He had 3 phone interviews for their summer internship with Jane Street traders, and they were like no interviews he'd ever heard of. For the in-person interview in mid-November, Jane Street wanted him to solve puzzles and play games for an entire day. For the first game, Sam was grouped in a room with 2 other applicants and a Jane Street trader. The trader dealt out a hand of poker, then asked them each to reveal a single card. Then he started suggesting all these weird wrinkles on poker. For example, you can pay 4 chips to exchange one of your cards for a new one. Does anyone want to do that? This wasn't poker. This was some kind of meta-poker. All of the games turned out to be as peculiar as the card game. They were testing him for an ability to make messy judgments and act quickly on them, and not be too bothered about questions to which he did not and could not know the answer. Jane Street offered him a summer internship. Later, on the Jane Street trading floor, one fellow trader still enjoyed dreaming up games and puzzles and putting them to Sam just to watch him play. Sam would not only understand the game, he would play it beautifully. Completely out of the blue, at the beginning of Sam's junior year at MIT, a 25-year-old lecturer in philosophy at Oxford University named Will MacAskill asked to meet with him. MacAskill belonged to a small group inside Oxford who had a new social movement they called effective altruism. The argument that MacAskill put to Sam and a small group of students in the fall of 2012 went as follows. You will spend roughly 80,000 hours of your life working. If you are the sort of person who wants to do good in the world, what is the most effective way to spend those hours? He suggested that the students judge the effectiveness of their lives by counting the number of lives they saved during those 80,000 hours. Was it better to become a doctor or a banker? He made a rough calculation of the number of lives saved by a doctor working in a poor country. And then he posed a question. What if I became an altruistic banker, pursuing a lucrative career in order to donate my earnings? Even a mediocre investment banker could expect sufficient lifetime earnings to pay for several doctors in Africa, and thus would save several times more lives than any one doctor. Anyone with the ability to go to Wall Street and make vast sums of money had something like a moral obligation to do so. Earn to give, McCaskill called his idea. By 2014, when Sam started as a full-time trader at Jane Street Capital, the new financial markets were increasingly automated. People didn't trade directly with people. People programmed computers to trade with other computers. Speed became maybe the single most valuable attribute in a trading system. "It's the most complex and efficient game in the world," said Sam. The younger traders had been harvested from the tiny slice of the population identified early in life as having a gift for higher-order thinking. They were less socially adept than the older traders because it mattered less how well traders negotiated with other people. What mattered was their ability to help the machine replace humans in financial markets. Like all the Jane Street traders, Sam was forever looking for ways to automate his trading decisions. "I felt most valuable when I was identifying areas where it hadn't been automated but could be automated," said Sam. In his annual reviews, his bosses let him know that they had him ranked at the top of his Jane Street class. After his third year, when he was 25 years old, they were about to hand him a bonus of $1 million. 3 years into his career at Jane Street, he remained fully committed to generating as many dollars as possible and channeling them into the causes that saved lives most efficiently. In the summer of 2017, he'd found himself asking a question. What is the likelihood that this job I stumbled into by accident yields my highest value? Later that summer, he finally took a vacation. Once he was free to experiment, it took him little time to see that cryptocurrency had gone from being a bizarre hobby horse to a semi-serious financial market. That year, the value of all crypto boomed, going from $15 billion to $760 billion. So far as Sam could see, none of the high-frequency trading firms traded crypto. He did a back-of-the-envelope calculation. If he could capture 5% of the entire market, he could make $1 million a day or more. As the market never closed, that meant profits of $365 million a year or more. "That was my ballpark estimate," he said. "It seemed crazy, so I just cut it by a factor of 10. I was thinking $30 million a year." Sam returned to Jane Street and quit his job. Caroline Ellison first met Sam at Jane Street after he'd been assigned to teach her class of interns how to trade. "I was kind of terrified of him," she said. Like Sam, she had discovered effective altruism in college and found in it an intellectually coherent sense of purpose. In the fall of 2017, she'd been sent by Jane Street back to Stanford University to recruit to high-frequency trading the mathematically gifted friends she'd left behind. Upon arrival, she'd called Sam and asked him to meet. Over coffee, Sam was cagey about what he was up to. But by the end of their chat, Caroline thought that maybe she should quit Jane Street and join the crypto trading firm Sam was secretly building. She'd be doing the same sort of research in crypto, but the underlying purpose would be entirely different because she would be doing it with other effective altruists. Alameda Research, as Sam was calling the new firm, was going to be a vessel to save some vast number of lives. In March of 2018, she moved to the Bay Area and started the job. The situation inside Alameda Research wasn't anything like Sam had led her to expect. He was demanding and expecting everyone to work 18-hour days while he would not show up for meetings, not shower for weeks, and fall asleep at his desk, said Tara McCauley, a young Australian mathematician who was, in theory, running the company with Sam. He did zero management, and then in his one-on-ones with people, he'd play video games. The firm's finances were already in a state of chaos. They'd started small, but within a few months, they'd persuaded other, richer, effective altruists to lend them $170 million to trade crypto. They'd lost millions of it already, although how many millions, no one could say for sure. In February, their trading system had lost $500,000 per day. On top of the trading losses, some additional millions had simply vanished. The entire management team wanted to leave, said one of its 5 members. Amid the turmoil, Sam's attitude towards the missing money was, it'll probably turn up somewhere, so let's trade. His first stab at an automated trading system was losing money at an alarming clip. But he'd created another, supposedly better one, ModelBot. Sam had not been able to let ModelBot rip the way he'd liked, because just about every other human being inside Alameda Research was doing whatever they could to stop him. It was entirely within the realm of possibility that we could lose all our money in an hour, said one. Up to that point in his life, Sam hadn't led much of anything, or even been vaguely responsible for other people. On the other hand, he had a nose for talent. His first call, made even before he left Jane Street, was to Gary Wang. Born in China but raised mainly in the United States, he was a year behind Sam at MIT and had lived in the same nerd house. Sam had listened to people who talked about Gary's coding genius. Sam had also played board games with Gary endlessly. Despite being very quiet, he was very smart, said Sam. He was good at games, so he could work on things that were not super literal. During his final few weeks at Jane Street, Sam told Gary about his plan to trade crypto for effective altruistic causes. Gary was in, and Sam had found his chief technology officer. So, in October 2017, Sam, Tara, and Gary used Sam's Jane Street bonus to make their first trades. By the end of December, they'd hired a bunch of effective altruists and raised $25 million in capital. Gary, basically all by himself, had written the code for an entire quantitative system. That month, they generated several $million in profits. Much of the money they made came from just 2 trades. That December, retail speculators in South Korea were driving Bitcoin to prices 20% higher than they were on U.S. exchanges, sometimes more. Anyone who could find a way to sell crypto in South Korea and at the same time buy it outside of South Korea could lock in vast profits. It wasn't trivial to do, however. Sam and his fellow effective altruists had a dozen ideas before they settled on Ripple. RippleNet was a platform, and its appeal was the same as Bitcoin's. The price of its coin, Ripple, moved up and down a lot, and so it was fun to gamble on. Ripple offered a path to exploit the insanity of the South Korean crypto markets. The profits were outrageous. Then one day in February 2018, someone, not Sam, who was frantically trading, noticed the missing Ripple. $4 million worth of it had vanished. So much Ripple and Bitcoin was flying around at any given time that it was at least possible that any missing Ripple was simply in transit. Sam suspected that the $4 million worth of Ripple had been sent from the exchange in the United States and had arrived at the exchange in South Korea, but that the South Korean exchange was just dragging its feet and crediting it to Alameda's account. The other members of the management team were unconvinced. They insisted that Sam stop trading so that they could figure out where the Ripple had gone. Sam stopped trading for 2 weeks, although he continued to insist that the missing Ripple was no big deal. By early April, the other executives at Alameda Research had all grown to fear how little Sam worried about exactly where their money was. And so on April 9th, 2018, his entire management team, along with half of his employees, walked out the door, with somewhere between $1 and $2 million in severance. Just about all of the outside investors kept money invested in Alameda, but just about all of them reduced the size of their investments. The capital at Sam's disposal plunged from $170 million to $40 million. With no one left to argue with him, Sam threw the switch and let ModelBot rip. "We turned it on, and it instantly started making us lots of money," said one of Alameda's employees. And then they finally found the $4 million worth of missing Ripple. It had been sent from a U.S. crypto exchange to an exchange in South Korea. Then they figured out that the computer languages used by the two exchanges were not perfectly compatible. Once Sam figured out where the missing Ripple was meant to be, he telephoned the South Korean exchange directly. A voice finally came on the line and said, "Are you the shit who sent us like 20 million Ripple tokens?" And they resumed making millions of dollars a month in trading profits. They weren't the same company, however. They were a small team who had endured an alarming drama and now trusted Sam. He'd been right all along. By late 2018, the dust had settled on what was being called the schism. Though she'd stuck it out, all was not right with Caroline, however, which was why she was now writing to Sam. "What is the problem?" she asked. "I have pretty strong romantic feelings for Sam." This was not a business memo. It was merely written in a business-like manner. "These feelings consume a ton of my brain space." The memo went on for 4 pages. Sam had left for what was meant to be a brief trip to Hong Kong. After he read her memo, he called the 15 or so people still working for him in downtown Berkeley to say he wasn't coming back. By early 2019, the big Wall Street high-frequency trading firms, and even Jane Street, were entering the crypto markets. In Hong Kong, Sam and his small team began to pitch the billionaire founders of existing exchanges on the idea of paying Alameda Research to create FTX, a crypto exchange, different in important ways from any that existed. Alameda would supply the technology. The existing exchanges would supply the customers and the trust. The most likely buyer, and the person to whom Sam himself pitched the idea, was CZ. CZ was Changpeng Zhao, CEO of the crypto exchange Binance. He'd created Binance in 2017. 2 years later, he was being described in industry publications as the most powerful man in crypto. After thinking it over for a few weeks in March 2019, CZ decided no. Only after CZ turned him down did Sam decide to create an exchange himself. The idea was simple. The first crypto futures exchange that was well enough designed that it would serve the needs not just of crypto people, but also of big professional traders like Jane Street. Still, Sam was deeply uneasy about it. "We were going to build a product that is better than any product out there," he said. "If it works, it is worth billions of dollars. But I'd never done marketing. I'd never talked to the media." And so he started grabbing people who might do the things he didn't know how to do. He grabbed Zane Tackett. Everyone in crypto knew Zane, and everyone trusted him. He grabbed Ryan Salem. Ryan was the highest expression of a new species, the crypto bro, that Sam sensed he needed on hand. To create a crypto exchange, Sam needed crypto people, but he also needed money to pay the crypto people. What he had was a token. The FTX token was called FTT. The most important feature of FTT was that its holders were collectively entitled to roughly a third of the annual revenues of the FTX exchange. One hitch to the tokens was that they were illegal to sell inside the United States. But the buyers of the FTT would either be foreigners or Americans living outside the country. And now that was who Sam was courting in his own awkward way. Out of thin air, FTX minted 350 million FTT tokens. Sam offered a chunk of them to employees at 5 cents each, and another chunk to important crypto people like CZ, who might be friends of the exchange, at 10 cents. CZ initially declined, but other outside investors bought up enough that Sam eventually raised the price. On July 29, 2019, FTT was listed on FTX and thus offered to the general public. It opened at $1 and traded up to $1.50. A few weeks later, CZ called Sam and offered to buy a 20% stake in FTX for $80 million. It was as if a wildcatter had accidentally built his house on an oil field. Sam hadn't even really wanted to run a crypto exchange, but it was exactly what the crypto world wanted. His timing, though accidental, was perfect, as big professional traders like Jane Street were entering the crypto markets and in need of a professional-grade futures exchange. The funny thing about Ramnik Arora was that all he'd really been looking for was a chance to walk to work. And so in the late spring of 2020, he plugged crypto and Berkeley into LinkedIn. He'd received a single result: Alameda Research. He sent in his resume. Within minutes, he received a Zoom invitation from Sam Bankman-Fried, who wanted to talk to him not about Alameda, but a new crypto exchange that Alameda Research had launched called FTX. Whatever Sam actually said on that call, Ramnik heard passion. He took a job with FTX at an 80% pay cut to what he'd been making at Facebook. Inside of 18 months, FTX had gone from nothing to the world's 5th biggest crypto exchange. And yet, FTX was just a piece of a much larger puzzle of Sam's design. He owned 90% of Alameda Research. The nature of Alameda Research was changing. It was still a quant trading firm, but its traders were playing in new ways with bigger and bigger sums of money. It was never clear where Alameda Research stopped and FTX started. Legally separate companies, they were both owned by the same person. They occupied the same big room on the 26th floor of an office building. Sam's desk was positioned at one end of the identical long trading desks used by both Alameda and FTX, with a clear view of both. At the same time, Sam sort of ran both and neither. Much of his day was spent promoting FTX and himself to the outside world. Seeing no single person inside of Alameda qualified to run it, Sam handed the job to 2 people. The first was a clever trader who Sam had known since math camp. But by the fall of 2021, Sam's private hedge fund was solely in the hands of its other co-CEO, Caroline Ellison. When he'd named her to the job, Sam imagined her managing the people. People really like being managed by her, Sam said. So Caroline was effectively managing both the people and the trading risk, while herself being managed only by Sam. This created some complications. She'd followed him from Berkeley to Hong Kong and re-entered their relationship. Caroline sensed that, even as Sam promoted her to CEO of Alameda Research, he disapproved of her job performance, and she shared his opinion. "Running Alameda doesn't feel like something that I'm comparatively suited to do," she wrote. 18 months earlier, Alameda Research had been limping along with $40 million in capital from a handful of effective altruist friends. It now had billions in it. The job had become more complicated. She was thinking aloud to her boss about either quitting her job or breaking up with him, or both. Before she could do either, Sam left again in August 2021 on a trip to the Bahamas to see if it might serve as a disaster recovery site if, say, the Chinese government shut them down. Sam liked it so much that pretty much on the spot, he decided to stay. For the second time in 3 years, he messaged a group of people he was meant to be leading to say he wouldn't be coming back. The Bahamas had financial regulation that explicitly allowed a crypto futures exchange and a neutral tax system. And after COVID stopped all cruise ship tourism and torpedoed its economy, it was sufficiently hungry for any kind of business that when Sam landed to check out the place, he found himself meeting with the newly elected prime minister. Just then, Alameda Research's raw trading profits kept rising from $50 million in 2018 to $1 billion in 2020 and again in 2021. FTX underpinned his growing empire. A real business with booming revenues and profits, FTX was now the world's fastest-growing crypto exchange and the casino of choice for big professional traders. And yet it still obviously had lots of room to grow. By the end of 2021, 16% of Americans claimed to have dabbled in crypto. It was only a matter of time, Sam thought, before regulators engaged with crypto and banished the unlicensed exchanges. Sam decided that the smart thing to do was to set out to establish FTX as the world's most regulated, most law-abiding, most rule-following crypto exchange. FTX could use the law and the regulators to drive crypto trading from its rival Binance and onto FTX. Before he could do any of this, he needed to get rid of CZ. CZ still owned the stake in FTX that he had bought in late 2019 for $80 million. Relations between Binance and FTX had since deteriorated into simmering resentment. By the middle of 2021, Sam saw that he could not sweet-talk regulators and at the same time have CZ as a big investor. In the end, Sam told CZ that he wanted to buy him out of his FTX shares. For the stake he'd paid $80 million to acquire, CZ demanded $2.2 billion. Sam agreed to pay it. Just before they signed the deal, CZ insisted on an extra $75 million. Sam paid that too. Whatever gratitude CZ felt about his $2 billion windfall, he hid. From then, it was a Cold War, said Sam. After Sam surprised Ryan Salem by calling for the whole company to follow him to the Bahamas, Ryan hired a young architect, Althea White, to design FTX's new corporate headquarters. Althea had never done anything like it. She brought in a friend from architecture school named Ian Rosenfield to help. And the curious thing about Ian, apart from the fact that he'd never designed office buildings either, was that he'd been a high school classmate of Sam's. He was shocked to discover that not only was Sam Bankman-Fried now one of the world's richest people, but he was also somehow working together with and even managing other human beings. Sam had handed Ryan his checkbook and told him to buy office space and as much worker housing as fast as possible without worrying about the cost. Ryan had snapped up between $250 and $300 million in real estate, including $153 million worth of condos in an expensive new resort called Albany. Along the way, Ryan had paid $4.5 million to acquire, as a site for a new corporate headquarters, 4.9 acres of jungle. Ryan handed the land and a budget of several $100 million to the young architects. "We were supposed to design a mini-city," said Ian. Before they could design a space to accommodate FTX, they needed to understand its structure and its rituals and its habits. They could see that these FTX people, like their leader, essentially lived in the office. Sam famously slept on the beanbag chair beside his desk in Hong Kong. The office needed showers and sleep spaces. What they want is power outlets all over the place, said Althea. Status in the company was measured by proximity to Sam. So the architects schemed the main building with glass walls and mezzanines. It gives you an opportunity to catch glimpses of Sam no matter where you were sitting, said Ian. On April 25th, 2022, the Bahamas media assembled. The new prime minister arrived with an entourage. A big group of FTXers appeared, carrying shovels with which to break ceremonial ground. And from a car that also carried FTX's COO, Constance Wang, Sam emerged, looking as if he had fallen out of a dumpster. Cargo shorts, wrinkled t-shirt, droopy white socks. Same guy, thought Ian. One of the first things I noticed about Sam Bankman-Fried was how easy he was to steal from. On that early morning in late April 2022, just about anyone could have walked right into Jungle Hut 27, where Sam worked, and taken whomever or whatever they wanted. Sam was a famous rich person who moved around without bodyguards while in possession of billions of dollars worth of various cryptocurrencies, which, while not all that useful as a means of exchange, made for excellent ransom. Sam wasn't in Jungle Hut number 27 when I arrived. I sat down at Sam's desk. A small mountain of objects spilled out. I picked through the items and made an inventory. 4 fidget spinners. 1 pillow. 4 manila folders containing confidential documents requiring Sam's signature. I was about halfway through the pile when Sam appeared. If he was curious about how I'd gotten into his office or why I was picking through the contents of his desk, he didn't show it. Something new was up. Elon Musk was buying Twitter, and Sam had been on the phone with one of Musk's advisors, Igor Kurganov, who was a self-described effective altruist. He and Sam had just spoken of the possibility that Sam might help to pay for the Twitter purchase. As it turned out, Sam had already sunk $100 million into Twitter shares and entertained a private fantasy of finding some way to buy the rest. When there was something new to buy, Sam often found it useful to talk it over with 2 of the people at the center of his world, Ramnik Arora and Nishad Singh. Now he grabbed them both and pulled them into what passed in the Jungle Hut for a meeting room. It had a single chair and a sofa, upon which Sam stretched, barefoot, a fidget spinner on his chest. Ramnik and Nishad sat down on the floor, cross-legged. All 3 wore short pants, and in the room for a moment, it felt like nap time for a small class of restless first graders. But then Sam explained what he wanted to talk about. Elon Musk really was going to buy Twitter, but he didn't really want to pay for it himself. He was looking for allies to pick up some of the $44 billion it was going to cost. They want us among them. What do you get out of this? Asked Nishad reasonably. There's some random shit, said Sam, then made it clear that the most important random shit was a new alliance with Elon Musk. Crypto lived on Twitter, and Musk was Twitter's loudest voice. He also controlled the world's biggest private fortune, and by employing Igor Kurganov, was signaling a willingness to direct some of it to effective altruist causes. How much are we thinking? Asked Ramnik. Maybe $1 billion, said Sam. An uneasy look crossed Ramnik's face and then vanished. But maybe as low as $250 million, said Sam. Can we actually talk to Elon? Asked Nishad. He's a weird dude, said Sam. He stared at the ceiling. Down on the floor, Nishad looked dubious. It will put us more on the map, said Sam. Is there anything for which being even more on the map is useful right now? Said Nishad. Sam clearly thought so. Twitter fascinated him. It's moved markets 5 times more than anything else out there, he said. They kicked the decision around only a bit longer. At some point, Sam simply decided they'd spent time enough for every possible useful thought on the subject to be had, and asked for a vote from the other two. No, said Nishad. No, or a very low amount, said Romnick. With that, the meeting ended. What I did not realize, but both Nishad and Romnick by now both just took for granted, was that Sam might still hand over some large sum of money to Elon Musk. Sure enough, Sam would soon message one of Musk's financial advisors to say he'd be willing to invest $5 billion if Musk was willing to move Twitter onto a blockchain. When Musk refused, Sam lost interest and decided to invest nothing at all. No one person had the full picture of the puzzle Sam had made out of money. Romnick likely had the clearest view of it, but even his view was partial. Inside of 3 years, Sam would deploy roughly $5 billion on a portfolio of 300 separate investments, which worked out to a new investment decision roughly every 3 days. If Sam spent only 20 minutes or so deciding whether to sink $1 billion into Twitter, it was because 20 minutes was all he could spare. So many other investment decisions awaited. The money nearly always came not from FTX, but from Alameda Research, which everyone thought of as Sam's private fund. A lot of what got done inside Sam's world got done without the usual checks and balances. The deals seemed to involve only Sam's money. Why shouldn't Sam be able to do with it whatever he pleased? Still, there couldn't be many other cases in human history of a person his age tossing around dollars in the amounts he was tossing them without the usual constraints of corporate life. A board of directors, for instance. For the past 18 months, various venture capitalists whom Sam had permitted to invest in FTX have been telling him that he should hire a serious grown-up to act as the company's chief financial officer. There is a functional religion around the CFO, said Sam. I'll ask them, why do I need one? They'll say, keep track of the money or make projections. I'm like, what the hell do you think I do all day? You think I don't know how much money we have? A few months later, toward the end of July 2022, I met Sam beside the tarmac of a private airfield in Northern California. As usual, he was late. When he finally arrived, he didn't so much step as tumble out of the back of a black car. He carried what appeared to be a small pile of old laundry. As he drew closer, I saw that it was a blue suit and a button-down Brooks Brothers shirt. This is my D.C. suit, he said, almost apologetically. 6 hours in the future, he was meant to have dinner with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, whom he'd never met. McConnell really cares about what you wear, said Sam, as he walked up the steps of the private plane and plopped the balled-up suit onto a spare seat. I eyed the ball of clothes. Its wrinkles were old and deep, not easily reversible. It was hard to see how these clothes would be of any use in this situation. Do you have a belt? I asked. I do not have a belt, he said, as he reached into a basket of vegan snacks, grabbed a sack of popcorn, and dropped into his seat. In recent decades, the laws in the United States had been loosened so that people and even corporations could donate effectively unlimited sums of money to political campaigns. Sam's attempts to change the world as he thought the world needed to be changed had little to do with his business. But to be effective, he had to hide what he was doing, lest others assume that the point of giving was to shape crypto legislation. In Sam's mind, his money wasn't crypto money. It was effective altruist money that he happened to have obtained through crypto. Sam had looked at the world and decided that 2 effective altruist-related causes made more sense to address with his money than any of the others. The first initiative was pandemic prevention. On the list of existential risks to humanity, pandemics occupied a special place. Someone really did need to take the lead in the creation of a global system of disease prediction. Sam guessed that it would take $100 billion, which put it beyond his reach. He might not have the money right now to do it himself, but he did have the money to persuade the U.S. government to do it. This very issue was the stated reason for his dinner with Mitch McConnell, to discuss an initiative to allocate $10 billion for pandemic response. In McConnell, Sam had found someone as interested as he was in another existential threat to humanity, Donald Trump. Trump's assault on the government and on the integrity of U.S. elections belonged, to Sam's way of thinking, on the same list as pandemics and artificial intelligence and climate change. At that moment, Sam was planning to give $15 to $30 million to McConnell to defeat the Trumpier candidates in the U.S. Senate races. As he told me that, he tossed popcorn in his mouth in a herky-jerky motion that meant popcorn was flying everywhere. Finally, we landed, and he ran to his dinner, leaving the mess for someone else to clean up. The sun was setting on the Albany Resort in the Bahamas when the effective altruists gathered to discuss how they might give their money away. The buildings surrounding the marina looked their best when the light was lowered. Orchid was the building closest to the ocean, and at night its penthouse was lit purple, and the purple light made it seem glamorous. That's where the effective altruists all lived. The interior of Orchid's penthouse contained stuff to be impressed by. 11,500 square feet of marble floors have been tricked out with luxury. The effective altruists already had half ruined the splendor. One wall was now obscured by a row of computer monitors whose cords snaked across the marble like jungle vines. The living room had been surrendered to a massive video game monitor. Caroline appeared with a glass of wine, which here counted as an act of hedonism, and the meeting began. From the money-making division of FTX, it was just her, Sam, Gary, and Nishad. From the money-giving side were the 4 employees who worked for FTX's philanthropic wing. Also present was their spiritual guru, Will McCaskill, who was, of course, in some way responsible for everyone, including Sam, even being there. Since McCaskill had first sold Sam back in the fall of 2012 on the idea of earning to give, the EA movement had obviously changed. It had become a lot less interested in saving the lives of existing human beings than future ones. In early 2020, movement co-founder Toby Ord had published a book, The Precipice, which laid out where his thinking had been for a while now. In it, he offered up rough estimates of the likelihood of various existential risks to humanity. The chance of a stellar explosion he put at 1 in a billion, and an asteroid strike at 1 in a million. The most likely threat to humanity, Ord argued, was runaway artificial intelligence. He put the odds of AI ending life as we know it at 1 in 10. If it happens, it wipes us all out, explained Sam. The role of ordinary human feeling in the movement didn't matter. What mattered was the math. Effective altruism was always fueled by a cool lust for the most logical way to lead a good life. At any rate, the people talking about where Sam's money was being spent weren't talking about buying bed nets to prevent malaria in Africa. They were looking for clever ways to reduce existential threat. The sums they were able to give away were about to increase, or so they all imagined. After handing out $30 million in 2021, they were on pace to hand out $1 billion in 2023. They had to move fast. Sam had somehow decided that the odds were low that he, or really most people, would do anything important after about the age of 40. To do their bit to save the species, he figured they had maybe 10 or at most 15 years. As it would turn out, they had 5 weeks. Between the start of the boom in 2017 and June of 2022, crypto had recreated the institutions of traditional finance without the rules and regulations and investor protections. It had brokers. It had exchanges that did not merely facilitate crypto trades, but also warehouse their customers' money, without any regulator paying a whole lot of attention to how they did this. The whole edifice relied on a fantastic amount of trust. By late October, that trust was gone, and crypto was in a souped-up version of an old-fashioned financial crisis. The day I landed in the Bahamas, Friday, November 11th, 2022, the signs on the airport walls were still cheerily pitching crypto, even though at 4:30 that morning, Sam had docu-signed the papers that threw FTX into bankruptcy in the United States. It was late afternoon by the time Natalie collected me from the airport. The night before, she'd resigned from her job as head of public relations. She knew what everyone now did. At least $8 billion belonging to crypto traders and meant to be safe and sound inside FTX had wound up instead inside Alameda Research. What had become of the $8 billion was not entirely clear, but it wasn't good. Like most FTX employees, she'd kept her money on the exchange. Now it was all gone. The jungle huts seemed entirely abandoned. Then, on the far side of the lot, a figure rounded a hut. It was Sam. He walked over and climbed into the car. "You know what's weird to think about?" he said. Saturday, everything was normal." I did my best to reconstruct what had happened in the previous few weeks. There had been another dust-up between Sam and Binance's CEO, CZ. On the evening of October 24th, 2022, Sam bumped into CZ at a conference. The next day, Sam had flown to Dubai to meet with its financial regulators. The regulators at the time hoped that FTX might make Dubai its Eastern Hemisphere headquarters. Sam later wrote up the message he'd tried to convey to them. "I love Dubai," he said, "but we can't be in the same place as Binance." In these woods, CZ was the biggest bear, and Sam seemed to be going out of his way to poke him. 3 days later, on November 2nd, the crypto news site CoinDesk published an article about a curious document that appeared to have been leaked to them by someone inside Alameda Research. It wasn't a formal balance sheet. There was no sign that it presented a complete picture of the contents of Alameda or that it was even real. It listed $14.6 billion of assets and $8 billion of liabilities that were supposedly inside of Alameda. What the article highlighted was that more than a third of the assets were FTT, the token FTX had issued 3 years earlier. The piece did not alarm or even surprise anyone at FTX. On Sunday morning, November 6th, CZ posted a tweet to his 7.3 million followers. "Due to recent revelations that have come to light, we have decided to liquidate any remaining FTT on our books." CZ still held roughly $500 million worth of FTT. Sam hadn't thought much more about the tweet than the CoinDesk article. But the run on FTX was spectacular. There had been $15 billion in customer deposits on the exchange. Each day between November 1st and November 5th, $200 million fled. By Tuesday morning, $5 billion had exited, and the exchange was clearly not going to be able to come up with enough cash to pay the swelling number of customers who wanted their money back. Caroline had responded to CZ's tweet on Sunday morning. "At CZ Binance, if you're looking to minimize the market impact on your FTT sales, Alameda will happily buy it all from you today at $22! The hope was that a concrete offer to buy at a certain price would shut CZ up and calm the market. It did the opposite. Within 20 seconds of Caroline's tweet came a rush to sell FTT by speculators who had borrowed money to buy it. The panic meant that by Monday night, the price of FTT had fallen from $22 to $7. Before the crisis, FTX was meant to be holding about $15 billion worth of customer deposits. $5 billion of that had already been paid out to customers, and so still inside FTX there should have been roughly $10 billion. There wasn't. There was still perhaps as much as $3 billion worth of hard currency and Bitcoin that they had yet to return to customers. On the night of November 6th, Sam had called Romnick and asked him to come over to talk about how they might find money. Romnick did not know why Sam so urgently needed money. Entering Sam's unit, he found Caroline was on a video screen. Nishad was agitated with Sam in a way that he'd never seen. Nothing any of them was saying made any sense. Eventually, Romnick gathered that they needed to raise $7 billion fast to fill what they thought might be a $7 billion hole. His obvious question was, why was there a hole in the first place? The next day, after lunch, an FTX lawyer named San Soon appeared. San was also perplexed. When I entered the room, no one acknowledged that money was being mishandled. The money was all there, we just had a liquidity issue. Sam and San and Romnick and others called everyone on the planet who might be able to deliver $7 billion quickly. From the universe of people with that kind of money to spare, only one person stepped forward to say he might be willing to spare it. CZ. For obvious reasons, CZ was the last person Sam wanted to call. Sam did not call CZ until Tuesday. I called CZ and started groveling, said Sam. 3 hours later, we had a letter of intent signed. The agreement gave Binance the entire company and the right to inspect the books of both FTX and Alameda Research. The following evening, Wednesday, November 9th, CZ said that whatever he'd seen had caused him to change his mind. Sam learned the news from a tweet. As a result of corporate due diligence, as well as the latest news reports regarding mishandled customer funds and alleged U.S. agency investigations, we have decided that we will not pursue the potential acquisition of FTX.com. That's when everyone who hadn't already crept away bolted for the airport. On Thursday, Christina Roll, the Bahamas' chief financial regulator, froze FTX's assets and effectively threw the company into liquidation, the Bahamas' version of bankruptcy. There remained the question of who would pass legal judgment on Sam and the others, and who would clean up their mess. The Bahamas had moved to put FTX into liquidation the day before Sam signed the papers declaring bankruptcy in the United States. By Monday, November 14th, the Albany resort reminded me of New Orleans a week after Hurricane Katrina. No people, lots of stuff, and a surface quiet that masked the deeper chaos. Sam's parents had flown to the Bahamas and would remain in the Orchid penthouse with their son until the end. The only other sign of FTX life inside the walls of the Albany resort came from a house directly behind Sam's place in Orchid. The Conch Shack had been handed to Constance Wang, the longest-tenured FTX employee in the Bahamas outside of Sam's inner circle of effective altruists. Sam still held out hope that he might resuscitate the exchange. That hope rested on a Chinese-born crypto billionaire named Justin Sun, who'd come to Sam with a plan. Seeing that he needed someone who spoke Mandarin, Sam had begged Constance to stay. More than anything, though, Constance wanted to understand what had just happened. Over and over, Constance confronted Sam with the suffering he'd inflicted upon the very people who had been most loyal to him. Most FTX employees had lost their life savings. Some had lost their spouses, their homes, their friends, and their good names. I had a question for Sam. It preoccupied me from the moment of the collapse. Where had the money gone? I'd poke and prod and always come away with the sense that I'd learned less than I needed to know. But on the evening of November 14th, Sam filled in one piece of this particular puzzle. FTX had lost a lot of money to hackers. To avoid encouraging other hackers, they'd kept their losses quiet. The biggest hacks occurred in March and April 2021. A lone trader had found a flaw in FTX risk management software. The trader had inflated the value of two thinly traded tokens, BitMax and MobileCoin, so he might borrow actually valuable crypto against them from FTX. Once he had it, he vanished, leaving FTX with a loss of $600 million worth of crypto. All losses due to theft combined had come to just a bit more than $1 billion. In all cases, the problem had been quietly fixed, and they all moved on and allowed the thieves to keep their loot. The hacks reduced by $1 billion the number of unexplained missing dollars. Sam was no help in reducing the number further. He dismissed the most obvious explanation. Alameda has suffered some big trading loss in the great crypto crash of 2022. It was a Monday evening, December 12th, 2022. A small crowd, CSI-looking people, officials, one very large Bahamian police officer, had stepped into the penthouse. Is Mr. Sam Bankman-Fried here? At first, no one could find Sam. He was tapping into his phone in one of the bathrooms. Less than an hour earlier, his lawyers had called to say that the U.S. government was giving him an hour to decide whether to return to the U.S. or face arrest in the Bahamas. He'd been rushing to send in his written testimony to the House Financial Services Committee. Sam had hoped to cut a deal that would allow him to appear in person without being detained by U.S. authorities, but before he'd hit send, the Bahamian police officer had him in handcuffs. Sam was later extradited to the United States. In an indictment brought by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Department of Justice charged Sam with various crimes and allowed him to post $250 million bond as bail. Mobs now gathered, and sentiment now hardened. From a distance, it was soon easy to make up one's mind about what had happened inside Sam's world, even before he had his day in court. At the end of the week of collapse, Sam's therapist had gone to the office. He finally came to Sam's desk. And that's when he saw the toppled king. Someone had taken the piece from an office chessboard and placed it sideways on Sam's keyboard.